Hello. So, as I said before, if you review movies for fun, like I do, or, for a job, you're kind of obligated at the end of the year to do a top and bottom list. I think if you review anything, you're kind of obligated to go back and do a review show of the reviews. So, and I find this fun, so I think I'm gonna get a little. This one takes a little bit more planning than my normal fare, because normally it's just off the cuff. So these are some of the films that I've had time to sit back, think about. Some of them I've rewatched, some of them I've tried to avoid again at all costs. So we're gonna start out. We'll start out being negative, and then we'll get positive. So we'll start with the top 10 worst movies of 2016. So I'm going to be recording these in kind of little snippets and not all at once. So if the time of day changes or my my clothes change, because I'm filming this kind of all over the place. Also, in coming up with this list, I kind of decided that the only real criteria I was going to give for it is that these have to be films that I reviewed for Drive Home Reviews. That's got to be it. Because I started doing these around spring break of 2016 when I was still with the Connection. Because the first one I went and saw was 10 Cloverfield Lane. So, pardon me. So, there's a lot of films that came out in that early part of the year. Things like Deadpool, Race, Eddie the Eagle, Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. There's a couple others in there that I went and saw but didn't do a review for. So I've decided to just limit these lists to the ones I've done a review for. So after lunch, I will do my first entry. I hope you all like these lists, and look forward to seeing them. So here we go. Top 10 worst films of 2016. Number 10. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is one that's going to end up on a lot of people's worst lists, especially a lot of internet critics. And I'm going to bet, I haven't seen any of them at the time of filming this, but I'm going to bet it's probably going to top most of their lists. And I understand why. It was a pretty wretched experience. I'm putting it fairly low on my list for a couple reasons. And I think the main one is that you can say a lot of bad stuff about this movie, and they're all true. I mean, seriously, every major complaint that everybody has had about this film is 100% justified. I'll go over those in a second. But there is one thing I have to say about it. A positive that I think it gets overlooked sometimes, especially when you look at some of the other films on this bottom of list. And that is that, if nothing else, the director, Zack Snyder, had a vision. He had a style, he had a look, he had, again, a vision for the film that is uniquely his. A lot of the directors that I see on here, and especially with a lot of the DC movies, you don't know what the director is trying to do. You don't know what the hell is going on. They're just kind of there. That was kind of the problem with, like, Green Lantern. So in this instance, there's a style to the film that is very comic booky. There's a look, a color palette. I mean, the guy made directorial choices, and when you get right down to it, I respect that over somebody who just, just points the camera and lets the CGI take over. I appreciate that he had something he was moving towards. Now, that saves him from being higher on the list, because at least with this film, you feel like effort did in fact go into it. There was effort put forward. They were really, really trying to make this thing a worthy contender to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and a good jumping off point for their own. You can tell just from the amount of money they spent, the advertising, that they were really trying. Now, here's the problem. Yes, it had a directorial vision. Yes, it had a style. Was it a style or a vision that in any way, shape, or form fit Batman v Superman? Absolutely freaking not. It was every style choice, every color choice, every directorial choice felt like it was deliberately done wrong. I give it props for making choices and taking chances, but after a while you get the feeling like they were doing it on purpose. How could you make this many damn mistakes? And I don't want to waste too much time going back over why this movie sucked, because I feel like this is going to be one of those films, not unlike, ironically, Batman and Robin, that people are just going to be raking over the coals for so many years. And so its flaws, its problems are all very, very well documented. So I don't feel like I need to go into them. But in the end, this thing is just a huge turd. It's terrible. It does everything wrong. And you want to see a comparison of how this should have been done? Go watch the movie that came out several months later called Captain America: Civil War, which we'll talk about when we get to my best of list. So yeah, Batman v Superman, just awful. Number 9. The Dressmaker. This is another one of those movies that I really, really, really wanted to like. Because it was different. And I think it earns a lower place on the list because, again, I think there were some really good elements to it. Kate Winslet is one of those actors that I really, really, really like. I like her as an actor. But I cannot give you a list of movies that she's in that I liked. I can give you one. I can give you Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. After that, if she's in a film I liked, I don't remember it. So she's in it. I think Liam Hemsworth did a better job in this than anything else I've seen him in. That's still not saying a whole hell of a lot, but still. It had a gorgeous costume design. The costume designs were just breathtaking. For a film called The Dressmaker, your costumes better be great. But all the different tonal shifts, all the different, just out of left field, seems like we're changing genre. We're going from a heart-wrenching revenge, a heart-wrenching tragedy to a bloody revenge tale to a goofy comedy. It just didn't. None of it held together. And again, I say this, trying to sound like a super intelligent critic. It's a film about really well-made clothes that holds together about as well as anything I ever tried to make in a costume shop, which is to say, not very well. It seriously looks like I just grabbed a bunch of scraps from the scrap bin and tried to glue them all together. Now, again, maybe this is a thing that is common in Australian films, because, I notice a lot of films kind of like Strictly Ballroom, Moulin Rouge, the Baz Luhrmann films, basically, because he's the only other Australian director I'm aware of. They all kind of do that too, but it still seems like in those movies, the different tonal shifts and everything still seem like they're all moving in the same direction. So, yeah, they're jarring, but they still feel like they're part of the same movie. That is not the case here. So, again, one that I really, really wanted to like, but just can't get up the gumption for. So, yeah. Sorry, Kate. Better luck next time. Number 8. The Mechanic and Keeping Up with the Joneses. Okay, so I'm counting The Mechanic and Keeping Up with the Joneses in one slot. I know that's kind of cheating, but it's my top 10 list, so my rules. You don't like it, go make your own. So, yeah, I put these two together because they're basically the same. The problem they have is the same, and that is my God, they are so lazy. They are such lazy films, man. Remember, I put Batman and Superman first because it kind of serves as a thesis statement, as a comparison for all these other films, and I talked about how, in that one, the director had at least a vision. At least there was effort put into it. There's no effort put into these movies. They are so generic and so bland and so lifeless. There's literally nothing in them that gives any reason for them to exist. There's nothing good. They're films that you look at and you go, how in the hell did this even get made? When you look at how much money and time and energy it takes to make a motion picture, and then to release it, advertise it, try to get people to see it. I mean, how in the hell did anyone look at these and go, oh, these are going to be, great films? Neither one of them are anything but a waste of your time. Made worse. This is why, kind of going back and looking at these films again. I've done a little bit of research since the first time I saw them. The woman, and again, I don't know her name. My apologies. The woman who plays the lead assassin or a secret agent in Keeping Up with the Joneses, that's the new Wonder Woman. Like, I didn't know that at the time, and that information just makes me really, really sad. And I already did not have high hopes for Wonder Woman, despite how everyone else seems to think the trailer automatically deserves an Oscar. But watching this person be an absolute charisma vacuum, it's like, that's how you handle a lead role? Oh my God, it just makes me think, well, this DC ship is just going to continue to sink. Ironically, and I'm going to say her name right if I don't, Issa Fisher, who's the redhead, she plays the housewife in Keeping Up with the Joneses. I actually did see a film of hers that I liked. She's in a romantic comedy with Ryan Reynolds called Definitely Maybe, and if you haven't seen that, go watch that. That's actually a really charming little comedy, but other than that, I mean, there's nothing redeemable. The Mechanic, I've never seen a Jason Statham film before, and to be honest, I still think I haven't. I mean, I don't know what that was. Nothing about it stands out. Nothing about it. Again, nothing justifies its existence. These are films that were made to fill out a schedule. They needed more films, I guess, and they just said these two. I don't know how cheap they are, but there you go. They're such lazy wastes of time. And I put them so far down the list because as bad as these movies were, and as much as I hated them, and as much as I still hate them, Really, they're really far down the list because there's nothing in them to really justify all that much hate. You know, you'll watch them once and you immediately forget everything about them. So putting time and energy into hating them, you're already putting more time and energy than anybody involved with making the films did. So I don't see a point to really putting these higher up on the list because there are films with much, much, much better reasons to hate them. But yeah, both of these just what a black hole. Number 7, The Legend of Tarzan. So this is a tough one because I know a lot of people, or at least I know 3 people, a lot of people. I know 3 people who actually like this movie. And their justification being that, you know, it reminds them a lot of the Tarzan films when they were kids. And that's fine. You know, I'm glad that you found a film that touches that place and you're really happy about it, touches that place. That sounds dirty. I need to write a script for these things. We have to avoid things like that. Anyway, that, you know, that recalls those wonderful times and emotions. And it's a great example of how, you know, one person's opinion is not the be-all and end-all. You know, you can have multiple points of view on a subject. That being said, God, this movie was boring as all hell. And it suffers the same problem that a lot of films on this list and a lot of modern reboots, reimaginings, whatever seem to have. And that is this dull, boring, brooding, washed out, overly CGI'd, you know, just the same canvas, and they just take the main character out and plop in a new one and make the same movie over again. I mean, this movie, there's nothing good in it. And it also suffers from a big problem, and I mentioned this in the original review, I think. This issue of it's Tarzan is clearly a product of its time. You know, of the time when it was written and the mindset and the tropes and you know, all that stuff that was popular or modern at that time. And it's one of those properties that is just very, very drenched in those kind of stigmas, you know. And when you try to reboot it and update it and try to tweak those things so that they're not as offensive or that they're more modern or whatever, it doesn't work. It just does not work because the property was not meant to handle those things. You know, there's still this, you know, they try very hard to do this, you know, not treat the Native African tribes as, you know, savages with the, you know, unga bunga, hunga hunga. But every time you see him, you see Damon Hunsu on there with his leopard print, you know, outfit. There's still this kind of skin crawlingly. It's like, oh, that's no good. The biggest example for me is Margaret Robbie as Jane, and this, you know, this thing they tried to do with her. You know, her line, you want me to scream like a damsel? I'm no damsel. Yes, you are, honey. Yes, you are. You can say you're not, but when you spend 90% of the film as someone's hostage and have to be rescued by the man at the end, you're a damsel. And you know what? Yes, I know that's not modern. I know that's not politically correct. You know, I know it's not right. But I would have appreciated it if you're going to make Jane the damsel, just make her the damsel and just don't try to do it but not do it. You know, don't half-ass it. If you're going to do it, go all the way. And folks, I need to touch on this. I really do. because I think we as a society need to stop this right now. We got to nip this in the bud right now, because I've heard these rumblings in regards to her 2 films this year. Folks, Margaret Robbie is not a good actor. Okay? Or if she is, the 2 films in which people are talking about her for do not give evidence of that. She's an attractive young lady, you know, and I'm sure, and maybe she's got hidden talent that another director with better scripts will get out of her, and maybe, you know, prove me wrong. But folks, she's not a good actor right now. The evidence is not in her favor. She wasn't good in this, and despite what you may think, despite what your libido may tell you, she was not good in Suicide Squad. We're going to get to that later, believe me. But I think we, as a society, need to say, Miss Robbie, you're a very attractive young lady, and we're not telling you not to keep acting, because, you know, that's the only way you're going to get better. But we just can't perpetuate this myth that you're brilliant anymore. We just can't. This is how we got Sharon Stone some years ago, people. You know, we were fooled by her initial hotness, and one scene, you know, where she crossed and uncrossed her legs, and look what we ended up with. You know, she just became a joke. So, no, folks, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to dump just on her. Again, I'm sure she's a lovely young lady, personally, and, you know, I'm not saying she can't become a good actor. But right now, she's not. You may think she's good, but that's your libido talking. Okay? So, let's stop fooling ourselves. Let's stop leading the poor child on. We don't like her for her mind. Okay? Let's stop being cruel to the girl. Alright? So, anyway. Legend of Tarzan, just boring, brooding, nothing. You know, and again, for a movie about a guy going back to Africa to fight apes and, you know, have all these jungle adventures, God, was it boring, and God, did it offer nothing new. Why was and again, I harp on this, why was the color palette so bland and washed out? It's Africa. It should be beautiful colors. Look at the Lion King. You know? So, yeah, terrible, terrible film. So, yeah. Next. Number 6. Florence Foster Jenkins. Ugh, man, this one was just uncomfortable to get through. You know, one of those films that is trying to convince you that it's this uplifting story of, you know, an underdog fighting their way and living their dream, and boy, it does not come off that way. I said it in my original review, I'll say it again. I mean, it just feels cruel. You know, you don't feel like you're there rooting for this woman to succeed. You feel like you're in on the joke. You feel like you're one of those kids, like in one of those terrible high school movies that you know, arranges it so the unpopular kid gets voted prom queen just so you can laugh at her. And it's not even a story about her, you know, if you're taking that metaphor, it's not even a story of the unpopular girl knowing that this has all been a joke at her expense, but deciding that she's going to go through with it anyway because, you know, she's going to show them that they don't control her, or, you know, she wants to have her moment, so she's going to, you know, she's going to take it no matter how it comes. You know, it's not even that. This woman has no idea that all these people have been paid off, that they're all snickering at her behind her back. You know, it's just really, it's mean-spirited, and what makes it even sadder is I don't believe that was what they intended, but that is what they got. You know, a very mean-spirited film, and it was unpleasant to sit through. And just pretty awful performances kind of across the board. Nothing in this one works. So yeah, so this one lands pretty hard on this list. Number 5. Jason Bourne. Oh, God. Oh, man. Talk about a series that just is done now and needs to be done now. You know, I've never been a huge fan of the Bourne movies. I don't hate them by any means. I've seen them all, and I think they're serviceable. You know, I think they were fine. They were kind of a new thing in the spy genre. You know, a little bit more gritty and realistic take on things. A little bit more emotionally conflicted hero. You know, they were kind of the counterpoint to Bond movies, and not in a bad way. But then their influence kind of snuck into Bond movies. But anyway, that's not the point. But I really felt that with the 3 that were out there, which was the Bourne Identity, I think the Bourne Supremacy, and the Bourne Ultimatum, I felt like they had told their complete story. You know, they did the job that they were meant to do, and should have been just kind of left alone. They tried, revitalizing it with pardon me, with Bourne Legacy with Jeremy Ratner, and yeah, this one just didn't. It didn't go over. So then they bring back Matt Damon, who it's pretty clear does these much in the same way back in the day that Clint Eastwood would do Dirty Harry movies. It was the only way he could make those really big paychecks so that he could then go off and do the movies he wants to do. And this is just... If you're going to bring a series back and try to revitalize it several years after its supposed final chapter, then at least take it in a new direction. Like the Rocky series, both with kind of coming back with Rocky Balboa and then again with Creed. Same story and all that. I mean, nothing really new or out of the ordinary, but at least they tried to tell a different story from a different point of view with it. And this one, it's like everything that they got done in the first 3 Bourne films, they nixed or reset and set up to do yet another one of these. There's no, kind of like the complaints I have for XMen Apocalypse. There's nothing new added. There's nothing different. It's the same boring crap shot with a shaky cam that just man, this was one of, again, you kind of look at it and The Mechanic as 2 of the most boring action films I've ever seen, but this one, for lack of better terminology, pardon the pun, but it had a legacy to live up to, and it didn't even come close to that. So it was just a pain to get through, and I'm one of those movies that I was legitimately sorry I paid money to go see. Number 4. XMen Apocalypse. Oh man, this movie, this movie, God, a tired, worn out, busted down franchise squeezing out one more, and God, it is such an uninspired, boring, just pointless romp. And I said it in my critique of it when I did the walk home review. I did this one when I was back in Alaska, but I mean, everything bad about the X-Men movies is there in this film. It's still bad. It's, And that is the problem, is that there's nothing new in this film. There's nothing inspired, no sequence that is just out there. I don't care what anybody says. Those Quicksilver sequences in the last two, they're not the be-all and end-all that people seem to make them out to be. They're just there, guys. You know, they're just trudging up the same stuff, recycling plots. The costumes look terrible. The special effects look like they're from the 90s. It's just, I mean, what can you say about it? What can you say? Just, oh. And I see the trailers now for Logan, the third Wolverine picture, and supposedly the last time Hugh Jackman is going to play Wolverine. And, you know, it looks good. I'm getting suckered in again. I don't know if it actually will be or what, but, I mean, it kind of looks good. But, I mean, after this one, you know, I went back and rewatched Days of Future Past, and it's better than I remember it. I think it had a lot of good stuff in it, but again, the series as a whole has just been running in place since the 2000s. And, you know, you have a series now that is basically made up of 3 separate trilogies. So it's 9 films, total 10 if you count Deadpool, which I don't. You know, that's 9 movies over the course of almost a decade, 15 years, something like that. I forget when the first one came out. So it's like, you've made no progress in that time. You know, other film series that have lasted that long, you know, think about, and part of this is just the way they are, but think about the Harry Potter franchise, which lasted about that long, had about the same number of films, had 8 films in it, but by the very nature of those films, with the kids growing up each year, even though the plots are kind of samey and whatnot, the films at least move the characters forward. They move the story forward each time. If by no other reason, then they're growing up, and growing up is moving forward. The X-Men films have not done that. They're still harping on the same points, the same logic, the same formula, and it was a weak formula to begin with, and it's an even weaker formula now. So I just want them to trash these films. I want them to stop, give it some time, hire a new director, get Bryan Singer away from the X-Men films. I know he doesn't have anything else going on, so I appreciate that when you don't have anything else, you cling on to the thing that made you famous or that made it work, but get him away from these films, wait a few years, and then maybe start over again if you feel like you really have to. And maybe, you know, I don't say that everybody has to do this, but maybe do one of those share things with Marvel Studios where, you know, or even if you don't do that, even if you keep the X-Men out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this universe of X-Men films needs to die. It's done, folks. Time to end it. It was great while it lasted. It gave us some great things, but they were weak from the beginning, and it's time to stop now. All right? So just stop. All right? Just stop. Number 3. Independence Day, Resurgence. You know, I debated where to put this one on the list. It was always going to end up on this list. I don't think anybody who saw the trailers really thought this one was going to, you know, not to, again, use a pun, you know, wasn't going to blow anyone away. But I think we all had some higher hopes, especially given the 20-odd years that they had to come up with something. But I think right there is the problem. Right there is that statement. You know, I've heard a lot of people say that, myself included. You know, they had 20 years to come up with something. Well, not actually. because it's not like, it's kind of like the same argument that I have for people who got mad at the Star Wars Episode 1 for, he had all these years to get it ready and da-da-da. Not really, because they weren't planning this for years. If they were planning an Independence Day sequel when the first one was such a hit, they were planning on something that was probably going to be a direct follow-up, something that was going to happen, right after the events of the first one. They didn't think about doing something 20 years later with all the actors, well, most of them, coming back. I mean, same thing with Star Wars Episode 1. Yeah, he might have told people he had an idea for it for years, but that doesn't mean he actually did, or that idea didn't change when, as the years went on. So no, they weren't working on this one movie for 20 years and this is the best we got. What this is a good example of is, this is why you shouldn't make sequels to certain films. And trying to cash in on nostalgia value sometimes just isn't enough, especially when the thing you're trying to cash in on is as classic, as Independence Day. Independence Day is a classic. It's got, even if you don't think it's a good movie, you got to admit it's got some of the most classic images, classic lines, classic moments of that period in filmmaking of the 90s. That was a quintessential 90s movie, and a lot of us who grew up with it, it's a very important film to us. And you can debate me all day about how good it actually is. I'll say that it's pretty damn good, but others, can't, you can't hook a computer up to an alien ship, whatever. But this is, who is really surprised that this film sucked? Who was really blown away by how bad it was? So for a little while I considered putting this one further down the list, kind of in that same argument I had for The Mechanic and Keeping Up with the Joneses, in that, you didn't expect it to be. It was bad. We expected it to be bad. So why waste time getting upset about it? But as I'm putting this list together, I'm thinking about, what I qualify as the worst movies of the year. Yeah, this one had to go higher, because this was just an absolute letdown from beginning to end. It wasn't even bad in a fun way. You can forgive something, kind of like Jurassic World. I maintain Jurassic World is a bad movie, and I will maintain that I think Jurassic World is probably the worst of the Jurassic Park sequels, if you ask my honest opinion. But, and again, this is a backhand compliment, at least it was bad in a fun way. It has rewatch value. You can rewatch it just to yell at how stupid it is. It's kind of bad in the sense that a lot of movies I used to show on Mystery Science Theater were bad. Yeah, bad, but there's a charm to it. There's something you can sit and watch and laugh at, if nothing else. This film has none of that. There's nothing fun in this. There's nothing good in this. There's no moment of, so bad it's good. There's no moment of, well, this is awful, but let's laugh at it. It's just terrible. Nothing lands. Nothing works. It combines all the worst elements of a lot of things from bad movies this year. The laziness that you see in Keeping Up with the Joneses and The Mechanic, the recycling of plot points and movements that you see in Jason Bourne, the casting of cutesy underwear models with no acting ability and no flushed out characters to back them up that you see in things like Suicide Squad. It really is just one of those movies that, again, given how much time and money it takes to make a motion picture, I can't believe this one made it out. I really can't. I mean, they couldn't have thought that the name value alone was going to save it. But apparently they did, and well, that was to their detriment. This film was awful, and it's one of those ones that kind of like Men in Black 2, kind of like some of the Jaws movies and whatnot. Which I'll even argue they can be watched for fun, even though they're terrible. I think this is one of those sequels that you just gotta do this, pretend it didn't exist, and don't let it sour your enjoyment of the original and how awesome the original is. So, yeah. Number 2. Manchester by the Sea. On the advice of numerous 12-step programs, I don't believe I should speak any further about this film. A friend of mine who hadn't seen my review asked me what I thought. I woke up 3 hours later with blood on my hands. I haven't seen them since. The only good thing I can say about this movie was that it probably brought more views and comments than any of the previous videos I've done. I'm not sure it was worth it. And the number 1 worst movie of 2016, Suicide Squad. Yep. So this one tops it out for me. This one, for me, was the worst movie of the year. I think that this one pretty much encapsulates everything wrong with the DC Cinematic Universe. It creates an ugly, ugly world that you don't want to spend any time in. It wants to be Guardians of the Galaxy so bad, but doesn't understand that what made Guardians of the Galaxy work was an enthralling, enjoyable new playground that you want to spend all your time in, and likable characters. More than that. So this movie does everything wrong, but there's one element it gets wrong, and it gets it wrong to such a horrid degree that to me it makes everything worse. One of those things I couldn't quite put my finger on when I first saw the film, but it's one of those things that it's been buried in the back of my brain ever since I saw it, and trying to pull it out, I haven't been able to put words to it, and then finally it hits me. One of the major things I complained about during my review of this is how this movie, like all films in the DC Cinematic Universe, seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes their characters work, of the core of their characters. And this movie has such a misunderstanding of one of its core characters that it's almost offensive. I mean, seriously. And that character is Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn, at her core, all right, is a living symbol of someone who cannot escape an abusive relationship. That is what she is. She is the embodiment of an abusive relationship. She is the product of someone warping her mind, beating her, using her, treating her like garbage. And the tragedy of the character is that she always comes back. This is what has made her more than just a cutesy girl in a clown outfit helping out the Joker like you'd see on the old Adam West Batman shows. This is what elevated her to a fully fleshed out character. Is that she's got all this goofiness going on and this kind of fun innocence, but it's masking this much, much, much darker subtext. I mean, the animated series where she came from understood this. Like, even in the earliest episodes, they show, little by little, it's subtle, they don't do it all at once, but they show how the Joker treats her. How he hits her at one point. You know, it's not a nice relationship they're in. You want to see Harley Quinn. You want to know Harley Quinn's character. Go watch an episode of the animated series. It's from season 4 called Mad Love, where it explains her backstory. And in the end of that episode, the Joker kicks her out of a window and she falls several stories and lands in the garbage. And as she's laying there broken, the camera kind of pans over her and she's laying there crying, saying, "It was my fault. I didn't get the joke." A person who just got kicked out of a window saying she deserved it. That is the trauma that we're dealing with this character. And the DC, the Batman the Animated Series showed you could have a character with that kind of complexity and still have fun with it. You know, that sounds sick, but it's true. You know, that it didn't have to be so in your face, but you could have complexity layered underneath all this kind of, you know, this subterfuge almost. So they proved they could do it in a cartoon for kids. But this movie for supposed adults takes this character, a character, again, that is a symbol of abuse, and makes her into a sex symbol. Okay? It is not to say that Harley has not been overly sexualized before. It's not to say that, you know, even in the Batman cartoon I mentioned, you know, that was all the girls wore these really low high mini skirts. So it's not to say she hasn't been over sexualized before. But to this degree, to make the over sexualization all of her character, and not only that, at least when they over-sexualized her, this is not trying to make a case for it and say it was okay before, but at least when they over-sexualized her before, they made it clear that she was a fully grown woman. She was an adult. This movie not only tries to over-sexualize her, but plays up the little girl aspect of it. The pigtails, the tiny shirt that says "Daddy's Little Brat" or something like that. All of it taken together just creates one of the most disgusting things that I have seen in a film in a long time. Okay? I know people might call me a prude or whatever, but it's the truth. It's something that, I mean, every time I look at the film, and every time I look at posters for it, there was something about it, and again, as part of it is just the absolute ugliness of the world they created. I say some cokehead's fever dream. But there was something about it that just went beyond, this looks ugly too. There's something nauseating about this, and I can't, you know, something that, for lack of better terminology, made me motion sick. And finally, I'm just thinking about it, and this just hit me, and it's like, holy crap. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe that's just me that feels this way. But to me, doing that to a character, doing that to a woman in the first place is bad. But doing that to a character, again, whose core concept is that she's an abuse victim. And the tragedy of that, and the tragedy of someone who is abused so brutally and yet still can't turn away. And to take that character and make them a sex symbol, to the degree they did, is unforgivable to me. Any good things this movie had, you know, like I say, Will Smith is acting his ass off in it, trying to save it. And it was good to see him in it, good to kind of feel like it's the return of old school action star Will Smith. But even that kind of goodwill that it built up pales in comparison to just how utterly disgusted and offended I am by this film and the way it handled that character. So that, for that reason, mainly. I mean, there are a lot of other reasons. A lot of other reasons to hate this movie. This is not a good movie, even if you take that factor out of it. It's a pretty awful, god-awful movie. But you add this factor into it, and it's for this reason that I declare Suicide Squad the worst movie of 2016. All right, so that's my list. Hope you enjoyed my worst. Well, next time we're going to be positive. But we're going to kind of ease into the positivity. I decided I want to do something a little different. We're going to have my top 10 best pictures of the year. But before we get there, I've got some good stuff for you. I got something a little original I want to do. So until that time, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.